You've almost certainly encountered the name Saul Goodman at some point, the fast-talking, morally flexible lawyer who always seems to find himself at the center of chaos, yet somehow manages to walk away not just intact, but often ahead. Whether you admire his cleverness or cringe at his methods, one undeniable truth stands out. Saul Goodman possesses a remarkable, almost uncanny ability to navigate hostility, opposition, and hatred in a way that most people never master. But what if there's something genuinely valuable buried beneath all of his questionable choices? What if the way Saul confronts adversity, criticism, and outright hatred holds lessons that ordinary people who aren't defending drug kingpins or exploiting legal loopholes, can actually apply to their own lives? Hate is attention, and attention is power. Most of us have experienced it at some point. Someone dismisses your ideas, undermines your efforts, or actively roots for your failure. It's a deeply uncomfortable feeling that can quietly erode your self-belief if you let it take root. The natural instinct is to either fight back aggressively or retreat into self-doubt. Saul Goodman does neither. Instead, he treats hatred as a resource. He understands something that very few people ever figure out. When someone hates you, they are paying attention to you. They are watching your every move, talking about you to others, and investing their emotional energy in your story. That kind of engagement, even when it's negative, carries real power. And if you're smart about it, you can redirect that energy to serve your own goals. Saul doesn't crumble when people speak poorly of him or work against him. He recalibrates. He takes note of who his opponents are, what they want, and how they operate. And then he uses that knowledge as strategic leverage. In his world, every critic is essentially a free source of intelligence about the obstacles ahead. The takeaway here isn't that you should go out of your way to provoke people or manufacture enemies. It's that you shouldn't be paralyzed by the hatred that naturally comes your way when you pursue something meaningful. Negativity directed at you is proof that you're visible, that you're doing something noteworthy enough to draw a reaction. The alternative, being completely ignored, is far less useful. When the hate comes from someone you love, some of the most instructive moments in Saul's story come not from his battles with criminals or corrupt officials, but from the deeply personal conflict with his own brother Chuck. Here was a man who was extraordinarily accomplished in his own right, a respected, brilliant legal mind. And yet he harbored an intense, almost obsessive disdain for Saul and everything Saul represented. Chuck viewed his brother as a fraud, an embarrassment, and a stain on the family name. He didn't just dislike Saul from a distance, he actively maneuvered to sabotage Saul's career and destroy his credibility. This kind of hatred, intimate, personal, and coming from someone whose approval you once craved, is uniquely devastating. It doesn't just sting the way a stranger's criticism does. It cuts at something deeper, at your sense of identity and belonging. Many people in Saul's position would have either abandoned their ambitions to earn back a loved one's respect or collapsed under the weight of that rejection entirely. Saul does something harder than both of those options. He keeps going anyway. He feels the pain of his brother's contempt, and the show makes clear that this relationship genuinely wounds him. But he refuses to let that pain become his ceiling. He channels it instead into forward motion. Chuck's rejection, as cruel as it was, became one of the defining forces that sharpened Saul's resolve and pushed him to keep proving himself on his own terms. The lesson here is particularly important for anyone who has faced disapproval or betrayal from family. Their opinions of you, no matter how loudly expressed or how deeply felt, do not have to define the boundaries of what you're allowed to become. Resilience isn't about avoiding failure, it's about what you do. Next, Saul Goodman is not a story of someone who never gets knocked down. In fact, he gets knocked down constantly. His career teeters on the edge of collapse more times than most people could count. His relationships fall apart, his plans unravel. He faces legal jeopardy, personal betrayal, and moments of genuine despair. By any conventional measure, he should have given up long ago. But resilience, as Saul demonstrates it, is not the ability to avoid failure or hardship. It's the stubborn refusal to let failure be the final word. It's the willingness to absorb a blow, take stock of what's left standing, and start building again from that point. Not from where you were before, but from exactly where you are right now. This is an important distinction. Too many people get stuck waiting to return to the version of their life that existed before things went wrong. Saul never does that. He doesn't grieve lost ground for long. He looks at the current situation, however dire, and asks what can be done with it. That pragmatic, forward-facing mindset is what separates people who eventually succeed from those who stay permanently defeated. Resilience is also, as Saul's story suggests, something that compounds over time. Each time you navigate a crisis and emerge from the other side, you carry with you not just the victory but the proof that you survived. That proof accumulates. It quietly builds a foundation of self-trust that makes the next crisis slightly less terrifying, because somewhere in the back of your mind, you remember that you've been here before and found a way through. Your enemies are showing you exactly how to beat them. One of Saul's most counterintuitive qualities is the way he regards the people who oppose him. Where most people see an enemy as a threat to be neutralized or avoided, Saul sees an enemy as a source of information and often an opportunity waiting to be unlocked. Every person who underestimates him gives him room to maneuver. Every person who dismisses him as a joke gives him the element of surprise. Every person who thinks they've backed him into a corner has, in fact, just handed him their playbook, because in the act of trying to trap him, they've revealed everything about how they think, what they value, and where their own blind spots are. Saul doesn't fight his opponents by matching their energy or escalating the conflict. He fights them with clarity, patience, and a level of strategic thinking that they consistently fail to anticipate. He exploits the gaps between what they expect him to do and what he actually does. And the more confident they are in their superiority, the wider those gaps tend to be. For the rest of us, this means there's often more to be gained from observing your opponents carefully than from confronting them head-on. The person who wants to see you fail is, in a strange way, highly motivated to study you. That same dynamic works in reverse. Study them back, understand their reasoning, their assumptions, and their weaknesses. Then act from a position of knowledge rather than raw emotion. Adaptability, the willingness to evolve. When the old way stops working. Another one of Saul's most underrated strengths is his flexibility. He doesn't have a single approach that he applies to every situation. He has a repertoire of approaches, and he shifts between them fluidly depending on what the moment demands. One day, he's speaking the language of the streets with casual ease. The next, he's presenting himself in a boardroom with practiced professionalism. He knows when to be aggressive and when to be patient. He knows when a situation calls for boldness and when it calls for stillness. This kind of adaptability is genuinely rare because most people are deeply attached to the methods that have worked for them in the past. There's comfort in familiarity, and there's a natural reluctance to abandon strategies that once delivered results. But the world doesn't hold still. Circumstances shift, people change, and what worked last year, or even last month, may be completely ineffective today. Saul's approach to this reality is refreshingly unsentimental. He holds no particular loyalty to any single method. His loyalty is to the outcome. If a strategy is working, he uses it. The moment it stops working, he discards it without ceremony and looks for something better. That willingness to let go of what no longer serves you is one of the hardest and most necessary skills any person can develop. Confidence, not the absence of doubt, but the decision to act. Anyway, if there is one quality that ties everything else together in Saul Goodman's character, it is confidence, a deep, almost unshakable belief in himself that persists even when circumstances give him every reason to doubt. He doesn't project confidence because things are going well. He projects it especially when they aren't. In his most precarious moments, when the situation looks completely hopeless, he somehow maintains a bearing that suggests he knows something others don't. And the fascinating thing is that this confidence isn't purely performative. It isn't a mask he wears to fool people, though it certainly has that effect. It comes from a genuine conviction that he is capable of finding a way through, that his mind is sharp enough, his instincts reliable enough, and his will strong enough to navigate whatever comes next. He doesn't need the world to validate him in order to feel certain about himself. He carries that certainty from within. This is perhaps the most transferable lesson of all. Confidence doesn't require perfection. It doesn't require a flawless track record or universal approval. It requires the decision, made deliberately and renewed constantly, to trust yourself enough to keep moving forward, even when the outcome is uncertain, even when critics are loud, and even when past failures are fresh in your memory. You don't earn confidence by waiting until you feel ready. You build it by acting, before you feel ready, and discovering, over and over again, that you were more capable than you gave yourself credit for. Saul Goodman is not a role model in any traditional sense. His methods are often deeply problematic, and the consequences of his choices are a cautionary tale in their own right. But embedded within his story is a set of psychological principles that are genuinely worth examining. The ability to reframe hate as fuel, to withstand personal rejection without losing direction, to bounce back from failure with pragmatic determination, to outthink rather than outmuscle opponents, to evolve when evolution is demanded, and to carry confidence not as a reward for success, but as a prerequisite for it. Those lessons don't require you to bend the rules or compromise your integrity. They just require you to look honestly at the world as it is, imperfect, often unfair, and full of people who won't believe in you, and decide to move forward anyway.